Hello and welcome back to Geek and Speak, the Geek and Seek podcast. Today, we are ranking our good friend Jason's commander decks. He's going to talk a little bit about each one of them, and then Preston and I, we're going to go ahead and judge them very harshly. Maybe some of them we like, though. But speaking of which, join with me today is, of course, in order to judge Jason's decks, we have to have Jason himself here. Jason, how's it going, man?
It is going pretty good. That was a lot of fun when we played that game, and I'm just excited to talk about all these decks. I feel really good about them.
For sure. And then as the judges and the critics for today, join with me is also Preston. How's it going, Preston?
Going pretty good. I'm excited to give Jason an F on every single one of his decks.
Well, we both know that I'm going to get really good grades on these decks, considering that for, 2 seasons in a row now, I have the highest win percentage. I don't really feel like I have bad decks, but I could be wrong.
We'll get into that here when we actually dive into what your decks specifically are. I'll just spoil this thought of mine real quick, though, is that I think it's more of a testament that Jason is just a good player. I don't think it's that his decks are good. I think it's just he's that good of a player. But we'll get more into that here in a little bit. Before we start judging Jason's decks, we wanted to let you guys know that if you like Geek and Seek, if you like our podcast, our gameplay, the other videos we're doing, you can support us by heading over to patreon.com/Geek and Seek YouTube. And if you can't support us financially, that's cool. You could just help us out by boosting us in the algorithm, by liking our videos, leaving comments, subscribing, obviously, and then check out some of our other videos. We have like 200 videos now. Been doing this off and on for quite a few years now, so we have lots of content that you can go back and check out if you haven't seen it. Let's go ahead and also hop into some news real quick before hopping into the main topic. Jason, start us off.
So just wanted to let everyone know, for the context of this episode of the podcast, it's important if you watch the last episode of Upkeep. On that episode, everyone played a deck that I built. I got to sit and watch the fun. It was a really good game. You should go check it out. Check out the end step for that. Check out the other episodes of Upkeep we have too. But for the context of this podcast, it's important if you watch the last episode, just because that's where it's relating to.
Yeah, so up next, we just wanted to point out that we've started to get some more previews from the upcoming Fallout precons. Those cards are looking pretty good so far, if I do say so myself. I think it's going to be really fun when those drop, and I'm hoping we can do something on the channel for them.
Yeah, if you guys would be interested in seeing either gameplay with the precons, that might be something we can work out, especially if Wizards is willing to help us out and send us the decks early or something. And then maybe we can do a podcast episode where we talk about our favorite cards. But yeah, let us know in the comments what some of your favorite cards are that are being previewed for this new Fallout set. It does look pretty neat. And then we wanted a third piece of news, and I couldn't really think of anything when we were putting this together. So I'm just going to start us off with some spice, which is that Archdruid's Charm, which was, I think, my number 2 card when we were talking about Mirzha Karlov Manor cards. I've actually come to the decision that it's actually not that good. And the reason I say that is, like, the reason that Preston... The reason that Preston was saying it's not that good is because it's triple green and it's hard to cast. That's not my problem. My mana bases are solid. I can do it. And it's also one of those cards that you don't care if you cast on turn 3. You're probably not. You're probably holding up for a situational use later in the game. My problem with Archdruid's Charm is actually just that, like, I don't know where to put it. Like, it's one of those cards that it almost read staple to me, but then I looked at all of my decks. And I have 25 commander decks. I don't know how many of them are green, a decent amount of them. And I looked at them, and I was holding an Archdruid's Charm. And I looked at my decks, and I was like, I don't know where to put it. Like, all my decks, they have enough removal. They have enough ramp. Like maybe it's worth cutting a card to add the Archdruid's Charm, but is it Archdruid's Charm is that much better? I don't know. So let me know in the comments. It was just weird that I went from, it was like my number 2 card in the set or something, to now I'm just like, it's fine.
I think Jason, you're criminally insane.
Well, you were kind of low on it, weren't you?
I thought it was hard to cast, but if you can make it work, it's a good card.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely a good card. It's just, it's less good than I thought. Like, I thought it was like the kind of card that you should jam in every deck that has green. And now I'm just like, okay, that's probably not true. It's probably good in like creature combo decks or decks that want specific lands for some kind of shenanigan. Like in those kind of decks, then it's awesome. But like in any other deck, it just seems fine. But
okay.
Oh, also, we have a new segment for the show that it's a trick to boost engagement. Got you. But we're going to start highlighting our favorite comments from the week. This is a comment from Jacob on the newest episode of Upkeep. And again, that was when we were playing a bunch of Jason's decks against each other. And he says, Legend says that across all 4 of Jason's decks, there's only enough lands for 1 mana base. And, we've done quite a bit of teasing Jason over several videos now, saying that he doesn't run enough lands in his deck. So I just thought that comment was pretty funny. So if you'd like to see your comment highlighted, leave funny comments on our videos and we might highlight one.
And Jacob, that is actually accurate. When I first saw this comment, I told the guys, is that Legend tells of a hero that will come and replenish the mana base of all of my decks, but such a hero has yet to arise.
Maybe someday. So as we're heading into the main topic for today, Jason, how many commander decks do you currently have? And then what kind of trends do you tend to see in your decks, just overall?
Okay, so currently I have 15 commander decks. What I notice about all these decks is, obviously the first thing I'm going to say is they all have a low mana base compared to what you might expect. Like, I think the highest amount of lands in any single deck I have is like 38. And that's one deck. And then the rest are like between 28 and 35. I really like 31 or 32 lands is really my sweet spot. If I can make it work as far as the mana curve, I'm going to run 32 lands ideally. And one of those 32 lands is an MDFC card. I also like tokens. It's just kind of, my thing. When I first built my Tatiova deck, that was kind of a tokens deck. Thalise is my favorite deck that I've ever built. That's a tokens deck. Gimbal, that's my artifact deck. Well, one of my artifact decks. My not as spicy, not as CEDH artifact deck. That's tokens. I just do a lot with tokens in the game. I think that they're really cool. Just a really cool thing that you can do. And there's a lot of different ways that you can use tokens, and there's a lot of different advantages you can get from having tokens or making tokens. And it's just a fun way to play the game that I enjoy and do a lot, even if I don't mean to. In essentially all of my decks, you're going to find basically every commander staple that color cares about. All my decks that have white in it, they're going to have Smothering Tithe, Teferi's Protection. All my decks that have blue in it, there are some exceptions to this, but all my decks that have blue in it are going to have Rhystic Study and Cyclonic Rift. Tatiova does not run Rhystic Study, but that's because I don't need it.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not.
The guys on the channel, like, they've seen me play it many, many, many times. You guys, the audience, have only seen me play it once. I draw virtually like 2/3 of my library or more every single game. So I don't need Rhystic Study. So there are certain exceptions to that. But for the most part, I put the staples in every single deck. And these guys don't necessarily do that all the time. I know Preston doesn't, he doesn't run Smothering Tithe in every white deck. So I kind of differ from in that end. Another thing is a lot of my decks have redundancy. I just want to make sure that even if one piece of my plan gets destroyed, I have other pieces in the deck that will essentially do the same thing or do something very similar, so that I can keep everything going and keep moving, keep working towards that win. So there's a lot of redundancy in my decks. And And then Morgan is hyped on this for a while. It's something that I picked up on early. Single target removal. Single target removal is so key for like what I try to do in terms of dealing with my opponents. I do run a fair amount of board wipes in certain decks. I mean, I think I run at least 3. That's the minimum. And then the max, I think I have like 8 in my Miracle deck or something like that. Well, I just, Miracle doesn't really care if I destroy my creatures because I get them back. So that's kind of one of the things. When I first built that deck, I had like 13. I took a lot out because people were getting upset. And understandably so. Especially single target removal that can target a wide variety of things. I want to be sure that any one of my removal spells can take care of as many things as possible. I wanted to be able to take care of an artifact, an enchantment, a creature, what have you. So those are just kind of the things that I tend to do when it comes to deck building and playing the game.
I think it's the main thing with targeted removal that I think you would agree with me on, because we've had the conversation before, is that as great as board wipes are and as necessary as they are, a lot of the time you don't really need to blow everything up. A lot of the time there's just 1 or 2 things that are prohibiting you from winning the game. So spend less mana so you can get rid of it. Because also if you board wipe, then you probably used all your mana and then everyone's going to get to rebuild before you. So having just flexible targeted removal is nice. And then as far as, I guess, your point about running a bunch of staples, I know a lot of people don't like that. Like, people don't like that it's like, oh, I'm building a white deck, so I have to run this card or, whatever. But I kind of agree with the logic. Like, I don't put Smothering Tithe in literally all of my white decks. I play a lot of white, and I only have Smothering Tithe in, I think, 3 decks. But I think the argument for doing what you do is that, well, if you want it to be a strong deck, it's objectively correct to run those staples. But if you're not building a strong deck and you're building something that's kind of janky or a goofy theme or something, you need those strong cards in the deck so that it can compete with the less jank decks. It
can balance the jank.
Yeah. So I understand why some people don't do that, and I don't do it as much as you do, but your logic makes sense to me.
One other thing I wanted to say about the targeted removal stuff. It also keeps you at a good position as far as politics at the table, because something that is a problem for you is likely going to be a problem for other people as well. So if you're taking care of something that is a problem for another person's game plan and it doesn't affect them or their board, they're probably going to be less inclined to do something damaging to you because they'll think, hey, they helped me out, took care of this thing. I didn't have to use my mana or my resources to take care of it. Let me leave them alone. So it kind of, getting in that good single target removal, it's going to help you as far as politicking with other players at the table, just because you're not affecting as many people at one time.
Yeah, Jason should be the arch enemy in 90% of games, but he always finds that way to weasel out of it.
Yeah.
He's like, guys, I'm helping.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm tricking anyone. I'm legitimately helping the table. I'm helping the people out. And
he's not a liar.
Don't mind the nuclear stockpile I'm building up.
Yeah.
Say that again, Morgan?
I said he's not a liar. He's just manipulative.
That's why I'm a good Magic player.
I mean, Jason's right. I mean, if we did a stats video for season 1 and you had the best win rate, or I think it was tied. I think because I won Revenge Week, I think we ended up being, I don't remember. And then this
Revenge
season,
Week doesn't count though, because Revenge Week is like the people who played in it. I agree.
I agree. And then for this season and season 2 of Upkeep, you're you got there. So he does it. He sneaks out the wins. But let's go ahead and jump into the specifics of your decks. If we have time, we're going to go through all of them. If we don't, we're going to make sure we're tackling his favorite decks first earlier on in the video. That way, if we don't have time, then maybe you guys aren't missing out. And I will do my best to remember if we have seen these decks on the channel, so I can say, hey, go check out this episode. If you want to see this deck in action, I'll try to do that. But Jason, take us through your first deck.
My number 1 deck. And this deck is featured in a video. and it's actually featured in our most viewed video to date. But it is Thalice Reverent Medium. That is my Orzhov tokens deck. That is still, to this day, my favorite deck that I have. It's so much fun to play. It's very slept on. I pull up to a table, and I put Thalice down, and they're like, "What is that?" "Oh, that's cool. That's a cool ability. I wonder how well that's gonna work." And then 6 turns later, I have 30 creatures, and they're all like 3/3s with flying. And now everyone is scared. And another reason why I like tokens is token decks are very resilient. They can rebuild very quickly. You wipe out a token deck, if that deck is built right, you can have at least a couple tokens or at least a couple things that make tokens on the follow-up turn, and then the turn after that, you're set up to put stuff back out and get yourself a big scary board again. Token decks can rebuild very quickly. It's one of the reasons why Thalice is my favorite. If something bad happens in Thalice, I know I'm going to be fine in 2 or 3 turns as long as I don't get the whole table's aggression. If I can avoid aggression from everyone at the table, after a couple turns, my token deck will be fine. I picked 3 cards to highlight in the deck that, to me, are the most essential cards for the deck. First, I'm going to get it out of the way. It's Smothering Tithe. White staple. Goes into every deck that I have that has white in it, basically. But Smothering Tithe works exceptionally well in Thalice because of Thalice's ability. It doesn't specifically say a creature token. It just says you make X amount of 1/1 white spirits for each token you made. So on everyone's turn, because Thalice trigger happens at everyone's end step, with Smothering Tithe on the battlefield, unless people are paying for that, I'm going to guarantee make a treasure token and make a 1/1 spirit all in the same turn. And that can happen 3 times before it gets back to my turn. Now I have 3 treasures and 3 1/1s with flying. That happens a lot when I play this deck. Another card that I want to highlight is Sot's Will. That card has won me more games than probably any other card in the deck, and I don't even think it's close. That card is so strong when paired with a commander that sees every single one of those tokens enter individually and then makes a token for each one of those tokens. So Sot's Will is a really, really strong card in this deck just because of the advantage that it can give you, especially because you have 3 graveyards to work with instead of just 1. And then the last one is Akroma's Will. Smothering Tithe is definitely a setup piece. It helps me get my mana, helps me build a board state. Sot's Will is a way for me to make a board state pretty instantaneously. And then it's like, all right, I got all these little tiny dumb creatures. What do I do with them? Cast Akroma's Will, give them every single ability I can think of, and then send them swing it. So those are the 3 cards that I wanted to highlight from that deck. Thalice, Reverent Medium, fantastic commander. By far and away my favorite commander deck that I have.
But according to EDH Rec, there's only barely over 2,000 decks built around Thalice.
That's super surprising.
Yeah, people are really sleeping on this card. And there was a comment on the last episode of Upkeep. So yeah, we've actually seen this deck of Jason's twice. He played it in, like he said, our most viewed video, which is where in season 1 we all played our favorite decks. And then on the last episode where we were all playing Jason's deck, Steven played Thalice. Spoiler alert, Thalice has won both of those games. Specifically with Sot's Will, it's kind of funny because I think part of why it won you that first game on the show is because I was playing Muldrotha. So you exiling the graveyard kind of wrecked me.
That's part of it. But at that point in the game, and usually at the point in the game when I cast Sot's Will, everybody's graveyard is usually pretty big, and I can at least get 6 creatures from it. If I get 6, oh gosh, I can't even remember what Sot's Will makes.
0/1 Thrall tokens.
Thralls, that's right. I knew there were 0/1s. I couldn't remember what they were. They're Thralls. So even if I get 6 Thralls, I'm going to get 6 1/1s with flying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 6 creatures with flying is pretty good. And then I cast an Akroma's Will. It's only 6 1/1s, but those 6 1/1s now have double strike, lifelink, indestructible, vigilance. So
Yeah.
It's even in those situations where I don't get a whole lot of Thrall tokens to then trigger Thales to get more spirits, it still usually is beneficial enough to where it's worth playing it basically anytime that it seems like it's valuable.
So I guess my only other note about this deck is that it is very strong, but something that someone pointed out in the comments of our newest episode, and I didn't realize that it was true until I double checked the deck list. But even though your deck has a ton of payoffs for tokens, it doesn't actually have that many ways of making tokens. It only has, I think, 15 cards in the deck that specifically make tokens, and that seems low. So it's shocking to me that even though that's true, and maybe it's just that, like we said, that Jason is a good player, but he's also just ridiculously lucky. Like I feel like Thales, it's not like your strongest deck by any means, but it's very consistently strong. Like it, more games than not, will do what it came to do, which is funny because it's a token deck that doesn't actually make that many tokens until it's too late.
Until it's too late, and then it makes way more tokens than you can handle.
Yeah. Preston, what do you think about this deck?
Well, one, Jason is the living MTG arena shuffler as a human being. That's why he is able to play these decks. But two, for this deck, yeah, I think this is maybe his strongest deck that doesn't feel oppressive ever. Because some of his other decks, like when they are starting to go off, it feels like you can't even do anything against them. This one never feels like impossible to overcome, which I actually like. Like it has that power, but it's not crushing you ever, really.
Yeah.
Not to carry on talking about this deck for too long, but I think the reason that is it never feels like it's impossible to overcome is because Thales as a commander is so underrated. You know, you, like Morgan said, there's barely 2,000 decks that have Thales as the commander. So you're not seeing it a whole lot. So somebody sees it at the table, you know, unless they know what the deck does and they've seen me play it before, they just, you know, they don't think twice about it. So if I have a really big board state, it never feels like it's something that's impossible to overcome just because they don't see Thales enough.
You also don't have as many cards that say you can't do this thing. Like I feel like you typically run more of those than are in this deck.
Go ahead. Give me your worst. Be honest with me. How do you rate Thales?
I would
probably say B+ to A- range for me.
B+ sounds good to me. It's consistent. It's not ridiculously powerful. It's not the most fun to play against because once the engine pieces are there, then you've waited too long to kill you. Because as we saw, like in the last episode, like Steven ended up gaining like 80 life that game. Like there's just like so much incremental, like, you know, a Johnny's Welcome is a slept on card in that deck because especially if you have those turns where you're making 20 plus tokens, what do? So that's kind of annoying, but it's not like whenever Thales comes out, I'm not like, oh no, it's going to be one of those games, you know? I'm just like, okay, cool. Right. Yeah, this will be a good game. So I like it. I say B+ sounds good.
I'll take a B+. I'll take a B+ for sure. So my second favorite deck is Tatiova, Benthic Druid. That is my Lands Matters deck. We saw that deck when we played, what was it, the Uncommon Commanders episode?
Yep, Uncommon Commanders.
Yep, so that's when we saw Tatiova. I kind of broke the rules in that game. Sorry about that, fellas. But I did lose, so, you know, it all worked out.
Oh, right. Yeah, he resolved Cultivator Colossus wrong.
Yeah,
or it was a Phyrexian Metamorph copying Steven's Cultivator Colossus.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
And he resolved the triggers wrong.
So yeah,
but
messed that up, but it's fine. I lost anyway, so it worked out. I love this deck so much. It was one of the first commander decks I ever built. It was the first deck I ever built that was actually really, really good. And it was the first deck I ever built that made me realize I like to play solitaire, guys. Because, you know, the first time I ever played it and the first time I started to go off, I had Omniscience and I just played it. and the guy across from me scooped. I didn't know why.
Logically.
I was that new to Magic. I didn't know why. Because I'm sitting there thinking, like, I don't really have anything in my hand that is going to win me the game right now. So I don't know why he scooped after he just saw the Omniscience. But now that I'm a more seasoned Magic player, I know exactly why he did that, because he thought I was about to just lay down some crazy infinite combo for free. And he was like, I don't want to wait. We can go to the next game. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love that.
But you do
deck.
kind of have a combo in there, don't you?
Of course, I have a combo in there.
Yeah,
Morgan,
walk us through
it was the first like one of the first commander decks I ever built, and it's in Simic. I'd be crazy not to put an infinite combo in there. So the 3-card combo, it consists of Sky Shroud Ranger or any other card that does the same thing. Retreat to Coral Helm and Maloku the Clouded Mirror. So the way that it works, Sky Shroud Ranger, you tap him to put a land onto the battlefield, retreat to Coral Helm, untaps the Sky Shroud Ranger so you can do it again. Now what if you don't have any lands in your hand? Well, now this is when you do the Maloku thing, and you put the land back into your hand, and then you tap the Sky Shroud Ranger to put the land back onto the battlefield, rinse and repeat, and with Tatiova on the battlefield, I can draw my entire library, and I can gain life equal to the number of cards in my library.
It's kind of ridiculous.
It's so good. And another thing that combo allows me to do is it basically allows me to play every land in my deck. So I have all the mana that I need to then play every spell that I just drew, or at least play enough spells from the spells that I just drew to win the game. I don't run Omniscience in that deck anymore, by the way. I don't run Omniscience in that deck anymore, by the way. So if you go watch that video and you look at the deck list from it, Omniscience isn't going to be in there because I don't run it in that deck anymore.
I mean, I know objectively I should hate it, but it would be hypocritical since I have the IEC, which is the same exact deck, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Like, you could have
commander.
99 different cards, and it's the worst that it's the same deck. So.
Yeah, I used to have a Simic Lands deck, and I spent way too much time debating on whether IEC or Tatiova was the better commander for it, because the 99 looks almost exactly the same no matter what. So,
and you put them in each other's 99 anyway.
Yeah,
so.
like a Tatiova deck is better with IEC in the 99, and IEC deck is better with a Tatiova in the 99. Yeah, so it's almost the same thing.
I feel like it's a rite of passage for any Magic player to build a Simic Lands deck. I feel like we all have to do it once.
Yeah. With that said, I'm going to give it a C. I've been very vocal about, like, Simic itself. Like, there are cool Simic decks that exist, and unique Simic decks that aren't ridiculously obnoxious to play against, but most of them are that. Most of them are awful and are and not by power level. Obviously, power level they're pretty good. It's more of the solitaire is not that fun to play against. You have to if you don't know the deck, like, those style of decks really punish you for not knowing the ins and outs of your deck. So that can also add to the solitaire turns taking even longer. So yes, I used to have a deck that was basically a Tatiova. I think I did settle on IEC for the commander of that, but I'm just tired of that play style. You know, I've said before, I'm tired of green. Green just is, it shouldn't be able to curb stomp the other colors in commander the way that it does. And Simic, I feel like, is just that to the 10th degree. So I give it a C. Like, I don't like flip the table when it comes out, but I know I'm setting myself up for that kind of game, you know?
Yeah, again, I probably should also rate it a C, but I have to give it a B just because it would be it would not be okay for me to judge it that harshly.
Yeah.
Come on, Preston, B+. You know you want to.
No, because IEC is the better commander.
You're just wrong, but that's okay. So, my number 3 favorite commander deck that I have, and this one is new, came in very recently, Gimbal, Gremlin Prodigy. I was just completely blown away by how much fun that deck is. The only reason that I got that deck initially was because I was trying to decide what precon I wanted to play for the precon episode that's coming up, the precon episode of Upkeep where everyone plays a precon deck. And so I got that precon and I played it a couple times just as itself with some constructed decks. And the first game I played, it did really good. I didn't win. But the second game I played, I I won. It was a pre-con deck that I won against like decks that guys had constructed and had been playing with for years, so they knew them inside and out. I was just playing this deck like the second time ever, and so that's when I knew this deck has so much potential to be really strong. So I took it apart, upgraded it, and I picked something else to play for the pre-con episode. But Gimbal is fantastic. If you're trying to find a really fun and different artifact-themed deck, get yourself a Gimbal Gremlin Prodigy deck. You're going to have a blast, I promise you. Couple of cards that are really important in that deck. One of them is Rise and Shine. Don't want to spoil anything too much just because it's a newer episode, but Rise and Shine does some pretty good work in that episode where I play Gimbal, so you should go check it out. And then Felden of the Third Path. That it's just a really strong artifact card. Don't really have much to say about it. It's just good. Goes in the deck for obvious reasons.
Yeah. So he played Gimbal on the episode of Upkeep that I think is the second newest episode. It was when all four of us were playing artifact decks, and it popped off. It went pretty crazy. Part of that is because I was the only one responsible enough to pay for Rhystic Study, but still, it was sad to me when this came out, because I remember when Gimbal was previewed, I was like, this looks sweet. And then like everyone like trash talked it because it was like one of, if not the worst of the precons, and that's sad. People weren't liking Plane Chase, or they didn't care that much, I should say, more than they didn't like it. And then the reprint value in this deck was just pretty low. So that was, kind of a bummer, but I think it's pretty cool. So what do you think about it, Preston?
I mean, I really like it. Like, we haven't got to see it too much yet, so it's kind of hard to say definitively how I feel about it. But from the little bit I have seen so far, I mean, I think it's one of Jason's more fun decks, to be sure. Again, powerful, but not like too powerful. Like, you can still play the game against it. So I like it so far. We'll have to see how it goes as he plays it more and gets new cards for it, and see if it gets gross at some point.
Yeah, I think I could give it probably an A- if I'm being honest. I really like the commander. It's a fun way to do artifacts. It's not oppressive, but it's good. It's strong. So I feel like A-.
I'll join you in A- for now, yeah.
Yeah.
There were two decks that I thought on my list that were going to get A's from you guys. There were two. Gimbal was one of them. I won't tell you what the other one was until we get to it. Well, cool. I'm glad that you guys like it. It's one of my favorite decks, obviously. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
So moving on to number 4. My number 4 favorite commander deck that I have is Admiral Brass Unsinkable. This was the commander that I played from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan episode, and I've done some upgrading to it. And you know what? It's just great. I didn't think that pirates were going to take me over like that. I didn't think that I was just going to have a really good time and keep the deck forever and play it often. But man, I love it so much. It's so much fun. Quick story. At the beginning of this year, I was in the Bahamas. I went on a cruise. I was only in the Bahamas for about 6 hours. I was on the boat for a lot longer than that. But I was with some family, and me and some people in my family, we had brought some Magic cards, and we played a little bit of Commander while we were there. I basically played Admiral Brass every single time for a couple reasons. One, I was in the Caribbean.
Duh. Yeah.
They're pirates. Duh. Theme. Flavor. I love the flavor. But second, it's just so much fun, and it's really, really good. And it matched up well with the decks that I was playing against. Pirates, man, they're so cool, and they can do cool stuff, like Time Stream Navigator. That is it's one of the better pirates in the deck. I don't know if I'd call it the best. It's definitely one I wanted to highlight because it's a card I'd never seen before. Is it new from Caverns of Ixalan? Pretty sure it was.
Yes. Wait. How come I can't? No, that was from I believe the second Rivals of Ixalan, maybe. I think that's what it's originally from.
Yeah, that was a card Time Stream Navigator was a card I did not know existed. So when I found it in that deck in the pre-con, I was like, this card is so cool. And then Black Market Connections. Kind of a staple card, I guess. But it works. It does so much work.
Was that your first time playing with Black Market Connections?
Yeah.
Is with this deck?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of an insane card. I'm just happy that Pirates has a good commander, because the original Admiral Brass that was from the original Ixalan set, I built that commander like way back in the day, like when pre-Geek and Seek, we were just getting into Magic like within the first year or two. It was probably the second or third deck I ever built. And like, I think a bunch of the people in our play group, we were like, let's each build around one of the tribes. And I was like, yo, I've been wanting to build a Grixis deck for a while. I haven't built one yet. I'm building Pirates. And I'm gonna be honest, it sucked. It was so like, it was functional. Like, it wasn't like unplayable or anything. It's just that the original Admiral Brass just really wasn't that good of a commander. This one's so much better. And I love the reanimation sub theme.
Yes, dude. That the finality counters, so good. Yeah. And think about like, you know, when you built that Pirates deck, think about all the good Pirates that we got, even just in Commander Legends, that first Commander Legends set. So many good Pirates came out of that. I mean, you know, before he got banned.
Hull Breacher, yeah.
Hull Breacher.
Yeah.
Gotta love Hull Breacher. But yeah, so Pirates has come a long way since then.
So I will say, for my rating of this deck, I don't know what to give it because I haven't actually played against it. I would say that it's probably high because I like the commander and I like Grixis and I like the reanimation sub theme, and I used to have a Pirates deck and I really wish it was good. So my intuition is that my ranking would probably be higher, but I'm not going to give it an answer just because I actually haven't played against it yet. Because I wasn't in that episode of Upkeep.
This is fair. These fair points.
Yeah, so I've played against it that time. I might have played against it since you changed it. I don't remember off the top of my head, so I also don't think I have enough to really say for sure, but I'd probably give it a B just to like give it something to hold on to for now until I get to experience it a little more. But I do like the deck. I like how it worked when you played it on the show, and just what the deck wants to do in general, I think is pretty cool.
I thought it was funny that when we filmed that episode, that it was an episode where it was a pre-con, so we know Jason had enough lands in his decks. Right. And he still missed a couple land drops. I thought that was funny. Yeah, next time we get together and we're not filming, you should pull this one out so I can play against it. And
I'm 100% gonna do that.
Yeah,
100%.
I want to play against it. It looks so cool. Why don't you go ahead and walk us through? I think we have time for a few more of these. Why don't you walk us through the next one?
So my number 5 favorite deck. I already know this one's not gonna get reviewed very well, but it's Joyra, Weatherlight Captain, baby. That is my CEDH level deck. It's not the strongest like competitive deck ever, so
it's like an 8 or a 9. It's not like a CEDH, but yeah, it curb stomps a casual pod.
It is a casual 10, a competitive 9. I'd give it a competitive 9. It's so much fun. I just love it. Whenever I'm playing against really, really powerful decks, I don't ever bust this deck out against people who are either new to Commander or aren't playing very strong decks. I don't ever just pull it out just to beat up on people. These guys can vouch for me. You know,
we don't actually see it that often.
No, and if I am going to play it, I always, or at least I try to always pull it out and be like, hey guys, I kind of want to play Joyra. Does anybody got a problem with that? And I just kind of see how the table feels. And honestly, if the table's like, you know, I really would rather you play something else, I'll put it away and I'll play Joyra another time.
This is your light pause.
Yeah, essentially. It's really strong, it's really fast, and it can just do crazy things really quickly. I mean, one of the best cards in the deck is Blightsteel, obviously. I have ways to cheat artifacts out into play. Also, I have ways to get as much mana as I need so that I can play it and just do all sorts of crazy stuff. Give them haste, swing out, kill somebody like that. But then it's really an artifact storm deck. I want to play really cheap artifacts, and I want to play the big storm spells that do stuff. So, cards like Grape Shot or Brain Freeze. Those are really some of the killers in the deck.
Yeah. And you guys haven't got to see it on the channel yet, mostly because it's, a higher... I think Jason's
I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if I had played Joyra in every game, I would have won every game.
That might be true. I mean, we have played against Joyra before where you never find your red mana source or something, and we're like, we got him, boys, we got him.
Yep.
But I mean, it usually is just consistently very, very good. We do have an episode that's going to be coming out. I don't remember when, but we are going to do a CEDH episode, and that's what Jason's bringing to the table. So it is like a meh CEDH deck, but it does just curb stomp at the casual power level. With that said, this is the epitome of a solitaire deck. Like, once the engine is online, and really what that really means is that Joyra's in play. If the commander's in play, that's all he needs to go off. I can't rate this very high, man. This is like...
No, I didn't expect it to be rated very high at all.
this has got to be like a D. Like...
Yeah, it's just not fun to play against.
It's so not. It's so not fun to play against. I'm sure you have a blast playing it. Like,
every time.
I'll admit.
I have so much fun.
Every now and then, I too want to have a game where I just do this.
Everyone does. As soon as you see somebody else do it, as soon as you see someone else play solitaire one time, you're like, I want to do that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely not something I enjoy playing against. What do you think, Preston?
I'll probably give it like a D+, C-, just because, I have that Light Pause deck. So again, I can't be too critical of something I'm known to do. But
do I have a deck like that? Do I have a deck that whenever I pull it out, everyone groans?
Not for the same reasons, I don't think.
Okay.
I think you've had decks like that before, but none of them quite to the level.
All right.
I imagine that's how people felt when you used to bust out Thraxamundar.
That deck was kind of funny.
I do have one question, Morgan.
Yes.
What would you rather play against, Light Pause or Joyra?
Ooh.
It's Joyra, right?
No, I think I'd rather
Light Pause.
I think I'd rather play against Light Pause because Light Pause, if I can kill Light Pause a couple times, he's kind of out of the game. And if I'm wrong, he's just going to kill me, and we'll just shuffle up in 30 minutes and go to the next game. Whereas with Joyra, that's just not true.
That's fair.
Yeah,
it's a fair point.
Yeah. Because even like if you keep Joyra off the table, there's a couple other engine pieces in the deck, or the curve is pretty low, so you can just go off anyways. It's Joyra. Even if the commander's removed, that deck is just a lot better. But yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about the next one?
All right, so moving on, we've cleared out the top 5. Moving on to, at this point, it's kind of just a fluid list. I wouldn't necessarily say that after the top 5 that any one commander deck is more favorite than the other. But the next one I wanted to talk about is Obeka Brute Chronologist. I've not actually played Obeka in a while. It's been a minute. But this deck is so cool. It's so much fun. I've never heard anyone complain about this deck ever, not a single time. It's just cool. You get to do really cool, weird stuff, and you turn cards that aren't necessarily that great into cards that are really good. One card I didn't actually put on here, but it just to show you cards that are good with Obeka. I think it's called Lightning Skelemental. It's like a 6/1, and it costs 3 mana, and it says sacrifice it at the beginning of your end step. And with Obeka on the battlefield, you don't have to sacrifice him. But the card that I did want to point out for Obeka is a card called Glorious End. It's just my favorite card in the deck because nobody ever sees it coming when I play it on them. They don't ever expect that I'm just going to end their turn randomly and face absolutely no consequences to it whatsoever. And I moved cards around in Obeka because there's new cards that get printed that say stuff like, do this, like, and then sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step or something until the beginning of your next end step. Those types of effects I could cancel out with Obeka. So I'm changing stuff out, making Obeka new and fresh all the time. It's really fun. I love Obeka. It's a fun deck.
Yeah, what do you think about this deck, Preston?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the most interesting deck he has to offer, just because I don't think there's any other commanders that can do this effect really at all. There might be one I just don't know about off the top of my head, but yeah, no, it's just cool watching him strategically end the turn to not get punished by cards that normally do something bad to you at the end there. So I really like it. I'd probably give it an A or so.
I also have to give it an A. Like, I think if I were to do an S, I would have to go back and be like, what is for sure my favorite of Jason's decks? And I did not do that. I did not double check what my S would be, but there's a chance it would have been this one, but so I have to go like A plus somewhere in there, because Obeka allows him to play so many unique cards that just either like they're underplayed or they don't have that many homes in Commander, so it's nice to see some of those cards, and a lot of those are cool cards, and yeah, we haven't actually got to see it on Upkeep before. We do have a spell table series that we haven't been very good about keeping up with, but we'll hopefully be bringing it back this summer. He did play it once on there. Really cool deck. I actually built a Cedrus, the Trader King deck kind of recently. Haven't got to show that on the channel yet, but I've played it with our group a few times. And part of why I was so excited about building that deck is because I was like, oh, finally, a deck I can put Obeka in the 99 in. Like, I was like, finally, it's so cool. It's the deck that when Jason's like, should I play this or should I play Obeka? I'm like, Obeka, do it. Play Obeka. Like, I get excited to play against it just because it's interesting. Like, there's fun things that will happen or interesting things that will happen that wouldn't normally happen in a game of Magic. So, yeah.
Two things. One, this was the second deck that I knew you both would give an A.
Heck
Absolutely knew it. That's why I wanted to do it immediately after the top 5. The second thing is, one time I ended a game by using Obeka to steal a Kozilek from someone's graveyard and then keeping it when I should have sacrificed it, and then swinging that person's Kozilek at them to kill them.
That's hilarious.
It was fun.
Yucky.
So now, just to kind of speed through and just kind of go over some of the last decks that I have. Next up is the Dragon. It's dragons. You know what it wants to do. It's pretty transparent. Hellkite Courser, probably the best card in the deck. Atarka World Render, probably the second best card in the deck, if you ask me. I just want to get Dragon out, swing, draw cards, do a lot of damage. Dragons, it's fun. Then is Finn the Fangbearer. That's my secret tree, folks. My secret Ents deck. I love it. It's so much. It's flavorful stuff like that does it for me, guys. If it's cool and it's on flavor and it has a theme, I'm all about it. So, Fangorn Tree Shepherd, one of my favorite cards in that deck, just because, tree folk, Ents. But probably the best card in the deck is Seraph the Viper's Fang. It just, gives all my tapped creatures Death Touch, so when they attack, Finn gets to do its thing. After that, we have Karth the Lion. Really, 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 really powerful deck. Probably the second most powerful deck that I have. It's probably Joyra and then Karth, and then probably Tatiova. The amount of value that I'm able to generate with Karth and the Planeswalkers that I have in that is unbelievable. If you want to build a Planeswalker deck and you don't know what to do yet, go with Karth. I promise you will have a good time. The best cards in that deck is every Vraska Planeswalker. I couldn't narrow it down to one because all the ones I have in there have one ability that says, it's a clause for a player to lose the game. Really, really strong, really good. And then Doubling Season, obviously. You put Doubling Season in a Planeswalker deck. If it has green, you just do. After that, we go to Tovolar, Dire Overlord. We've talked about Tovolar a few times. We know how we feel about Tovolar and werewolves and all that good stuff. Love Tovolar, love werewolves. Avabrook Caretaker, the best werewolf card in existence.
It's
best
so good
werewolf.
that I play it in a deck that's not a werewolf deck. That's how good it is.
It's so good. It's literally the best werewolf card ever printed, ever. And you can't argue that with me, because you'll lose that argument. Anyways, and then the next best card in that deck is Unnatural Growth. It's kind of a green staple now, but, it's a mono green staple, I'll say that. But yeah, it's really works really well in the deck. Especially with Avabrook Caretaker, I'm putting +1/+2/+2 or 2+1/+1 counters on things, and then I'm doubling the power at combat, and that's each combat. Oh my god. Then we have Gandalf the Grey. Love this deck. I kind of love it for a similar reason that I love Finn. It's Lord of the Rings themed. It's a Lord of the Rings commander. Accidentally kind of became Wizards Tribal. Didn't necessarily mean for it to do that, but there's a lot of wizards in the deck. Surprisingly. But it's all about casting spells. It's a Spellslinger deck. So, cards like Storm of Saruman, one of the better cards in the deck. It's going to help me get more value out of all the instants and sorceries I'm casting. And then Fiery Inscription. Fiery Inscription has dealt so much damage to people over the time that I've had this deck and played this deck. It's unbelievable. It is a card that I can absolutely never take out of Gandalf because it just works too good in that deck. So Gandalf is a lot of fun. Gandalf was originally what Morgan was going to play when we had the episode where everybody played my decks. But he changed it to Miracle, Lord of Bones, just to kind of match up with the power level of the other decks at the table. So Miracle, another really strong deck, pretty high cost commander. So, this is one of the decks where I do run a lot more lands than what I would normally run, just because I want to make sure that I don't miss my land drops and I'm not casting my commander, because my commander is a huge part of my game plan. Devoted Druid and Miracle is an infinite combo right there. You figure out a way to either sacrifice Devoted Druid or destroy it by attacking or blocking or something with Miracle on the battlefield. Now Devoted Druid comes back as an enchantment. You can tap it for a green, put a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it, and hey, it's an enchantment now, not a creature. So those -1/-1 counters mean absolutely nothing. So infinite green mana. And then Avacyn, Angel of Hope, another good card. It's good as a creature, but it's also really good if I exile it and bring it back as an enchantment. Really good. After that, we have what I think is the last one. The last one that I'm going to talk about is Machias the Lunarch. I played this on the first episode of the season. Was that the least played color episode?
It was the second episode of the season, but yeah,
second.
It was supposed to be. Season. It was going to be the first episode until we got the sponsorship to do the Eldraine episode.
Right. Just good. It's white good stuff. That's what it is. It's a mono white deck that just has mono white good cards in it. These aren't necessarily the best cards, but these are my favorite cards in the deck by far. It's the One Ring and Gandalf the White.
That combo.
They're both amazing. And that combo literally, like, if I don't play those cards in that game, I don't win that game. There's no shot I win that game if I don't play both of those cards when I played them.
Yeah, in the least played color episode,
Sorry I didn't give a spoiler alert for that one, but that was the second episode of the season, fellas.
Yeah.
You folks should have watched it by now.
I will say that is it's one of our least viewed episodes, and it's actually, I think, one of the most exciting games. And I know why it wasn't.
It really is.
I know why not as many people watch it. Like, it's a weird theme. It's not the most popular commanders, but man, that game was so fun. So if you haven't seen that episode, it's worth watching, even though you know who wins.
It really is.
It seriously was one of my favorite episodes we've done this season. I'll say this, that in hindsight, I kind of wish I had played the Gandalf the Grey deck instead of Miracle. Like, I love Miracle, but I've already played Abzan a couple of times in the season. I did it on the custom episode, and I'm doing it on the partner episode, which comes out. Well, it's the next episode that's coming out. So I've already played Abzan a couple times, and had I played Gandalf, between Upkeep and our Spell Table series, Gandalf the Grey is the only one of your decks that has not been seen on the show yet. So then we could say, then it has. Then all of your decks have been seen on the show. So that would have been kind of cool. So in hindsight, I should have done that, but is what it is.
Yeah. I think Miracle was the proper choice personally.
So Preston, of all of those decks that Jason just speed ran through, which one is your favorite to play against? While you're thinking, I will say that the Karth the Lion one is up there for me. The only reason I'm not going to say it's my favorite of those to play against is because I think my judgment of it is clouded, because by far the most memorable game we have with that is when we did the Plane Chase episode of Upkeep, and you played it in that episode, and that was also just an amazing game.
Much fun. I want to play Planes Chase again, just like us. Like, we need to do that.
We do. We don't do it very often. Yeah. We have a Plane Chase deck, but we've only done it a few times. We really should do it more often. But so I'm not going to say Karth just because I think that game has skewed my perception of the deck too much. So I guess I'm going to say Miracle, because that was, obviously I like it because that's the deck I chose to play when we last episode where we all played your decks. And it's a good time, man. It's cool. I've almost built the deck before myself. It's cool. I like it.
I do also want to say that I would have actually vetoed you saying that Karth is your favorite to play against, because Karth is so oppressive. It's kind of for casual commander, it's kind of busted.
I kind of hate that deck. I think it's cool, but I don't have fun playing against it at all.
Super cool. Not a fun deck to play against. There's absolutely no shot it's a fun deck to play against when you're watching me alt 3 or 4 planeswalkers on one turn, and now you can't do anything, and the player to your left is dead.
Obviously doubling season is insane, right? Like, doubling season, if it's coming, you have to counter it or remove it right away, obviously. But outside of that, I do agree that the deck is actually kind of hard to play against, just because, like, how many board wipes get rid of planeswalkers? Most board wipes don't get rid of planeswalkers. Like, some do, right? Like Undo Inversion, Hour of Revelation. Like, there are ones that do, but a lot of them are not going to get rid of planeswalkers. So then it's like, okay, I board wipe. Now the planeswalker deck is still fine. That's not good. And then, like, all the times I'm spending attacking your planeswalkers is times I'm not attacking you, or vice versa. So it is kind of hard to play against. But it's like, that's a challenge I'm willing to take. I'd rather that than Joyra.
Here's something I'll say about that specifically. Because of Karth wanting me to, Karth really wants you to alt all your planeswalkers. That's what it wants you to do. Because when your planeswalker goes to the graveyard, you get to look at the top 7 and you get to find a new planeswalker. So Karth wants you to be doing those things, getting rid of your planeswalkers. So what it allows me to do, and there's only really one specific card. Well, there's a couple, I guess, because of green, but Heroic Intervention. Because Karth wants my planeswalkers to go to the graveyard, I can really be choosy about when I cast that. So basically every game that I play with Karth, if I get Heroic Intervention into my hand, unless I'm going to win the game and it stays in my hand, I will be able to protect myself just as I'm about to get blown away, because I have the ability to choose which planeswalkers I can and can't afford to lose.
Heroic Intervention won't save your planeswalkers.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because
permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess it would keep them from getting blown up by, like, targeted removal or something.
That's what I mean. You said board wipe. You were talking board wipes.
Yeah. But
that was my point.
Okay, my point was my point was just, if creatures are attacking, then Heroic Intervention doesn't save it, because it's removing the counters. so that won't work
No,
with them being
yeah.
indestructible. But you're
No,
right. In the
you-
case of like
you
a
were
heroic,
just-
yeah, you're right in the sense of like an Hour of Revelation or like a Beast Within or something like that. Then you're right.
Yeah, because I mean, you had just brought up, not many board wipes can get rid of planeswalkers. So it's like, and even if you cast a board wipe that is going to get rid of my planeswalkers, I'm probably good.
Mhm. Yeah. So Preston,
Karth is the second best Super Friends commander.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah. So Preston, what do you think is now that you had some time to think, what do you think is your favorite of those decks to play against?
Of the ones that he mentioned in the later half, I would probably go with, I think Finn. Like, because I kind of like how he did that weird little tree folk, like hidden thing. Because that's not what you're expecting when you play against a Finn deck. Because normally Finn decks are miserable to play against. I hate the actual Finn deck, but his is a fun little twist on it that I can appreciate.
Yeah, see, a lot of my decks. Well, I don't want to say a lot because I don't personally think it's a lot, but a fair amount of my decks, they're a bit oppressive and very solitary, and I didn't want to. Finn is a very easy commander to go over the top and build something really broken that no one has fun playing against at all. I didn't necessarily want to do that. I just kind of wanted it to be kind of fun, and I wanted people to enjoy it. And also, I didn't have a mono green deck, and I was like, this seems kind of perfect, and I can do my own fun little twist with my Ent army.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, if you build Finn the right way, then yeah, it's really oppressive. But because Jason was just like, I just want to play a bunch of cool green creatures, especially tree folk. Like if Sereth, the Viper's Fang, is not in play, I'm not that scared of Finn. I just know I'm going to see some cool creatures.
Yeah, no, you don't need to be. It's not going to do anything like that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Jason, thanks for walking us through all of your decks. This was a lot of fun. I like doing this. We did this with Preston's decks after we played the episode where we did all of his. We'll get around to doing this with the rest of the guys in our play group at some point for sure. Make sure you're subscribed. Check out that game where we play Jason's decks if you haven't seen it. All that good stuff. Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up this video?
Anyone in the comments who has like suggestions for me, I'd be more than happy to read that. If anyone in the comments has questions for me about any of my decks or the way that I prefer to build decks, anything like that, feel free to ask. I love interacting with the community and answering people's questions, stuff like that,
Yeah, and if your comments and if your roasts are good enough, you might show up in our comment of the week next week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shout out Jacob.
Yeah. And I also think Jacob's one of our patrons. So thanks for supporting the show, man. You're a real homie. All right. Yeah, we will be back next week for another episode of the podcast. Hope you guys have a good week, and we'll see you around. Bye.